Hi, I'm John. I'm a game designer and developer in the UK games industry. Been doing it for 13 years. I work for Torpedo, a creative agency. We've been working with Autodesk on a sample game called Cat Fu to help budding 3D game developers begin their journey. So once you've got your gameplay mechanics up and running, you're going to need to come up with some way to get the player doing the same thing over and over again without getting bored. This is why levels are so important, and this is what we're going to be talking about in this video. Even if you've already spent a lot of time perfecting your gameplay, you're always going to find that you need to go back and script new features while you're building levels. So the first step in building a level is to get a rough idea of how you want the level to be. Maybe make a quick sketch on paper. It's much better to start building when you've got a plan. So next up, you want to actually start building your level. Depending on the game and the tools you're using, this could be modelling it bespoke in a 3D modelling tool, or you could use perhaps a terrain engine within your game engine. With Cat Fu, we made the levels by rearranging kind of building blocks to build up the shape of the streets. So with modern game engines, it's really easy to drag static art assets into your level and position them around. This is a really good way of adding interest to your levels quickly. So the next step is to think about how you're going to position your gameplay elements within the level. For example, if you're making a get from A to B type level, you're going to need to think about where you're going to position the NPCs in order to create the most interesting encounters for the player. So one issue we had with Cat Fu with the level building was our first level was just way too big and it wasn't fun. So we rebuilt it from the ground up to be more compact and more what you'd expect from the first level in the game. So another problem we had with Cat Fu was we found that when the player got to the edge of the level, they could see into the black void. So we fixed this by creating some extra unreachable buildings around the edge to block them off. So with Cat Fu, we use a system called procedural generation to build the levels automatically. This was a time saver for us, but it created a problem in that sometimes paths are being created that would take too long for the player to reach the action. So we solved this by coming up with a clever piece of code that would make sure that any paths that exceeded a certain length would be interconnected by additional shortcuts. It's a good idea to make a rough prototype of the entire level layout first using simple geometry and objects. It's going to take a lot of moving and tweaking to make your level perfect, and it's a lot harder to do this if you're working with full art assets. So a useful technique for making levels is to create a kind of modular building block set in a 3D modelling program. You can then quickly and easily lay out entire levels by copying and pasting these same blocks. This can also have useful technical benefits as well. It reduces the amount of memory that's needed to store the geometry, and it can also have performance benefits as well, as the graphics card can optimise how much data is being uploaded to it on each draw call. The most important thing to remember about designing a level is that it needs to be based around the needs of your gameplay mechanics. So for example, if you're making a shooter game, you need to make sure your levels aren't that confined, so you've got plenty of space to line up your shots. If you're making a game with melee combat, you need to make sure that things aren't too spaced out, so the player doesn't have to move too far between encounters. If you're making a platform game, you need to make sure the player's got lots of fun things to jump on, and you need to make sure that their jumps can actually reach the objects.